I'm ConceptSoup. This is a Fallout 3 bobblehead Charisma edition, and this is the SSUPD Meshlicious, which now I'm reading this out loud is a very difficult word to enunciate. Meshlicious, 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 my sir. Meshlicious, madame. Meshlicious, madame and monsieur, yes. Anyway, we'll take a case tour, show off the features, chuck a real build inside, and tie it all up with some performance benchmarks. And fine, yes, I'll take off the dressing gown. Energy prices are mad here in the UK, so I'm doing all I can to not turn the heating on. Lego! SSUPD, and I'm going to be calling it SUPD from now on, is an offshoot of Lian Li, which hopefully means there'll be some intelligent design inside. It's a teeny weeny case, ideal for space-restricted setups, but it can fit a full ATX power supply and your big boy graphics cards. There's many versions of this case, so you've got full mesh, you've got one side mesh, one side glass, you've got a PCIe version 3 riser, version 4 riser, or you can get it in black or white. So there's plenty of choice out there depending on what you need. All the paneling is toolless, so you simply pull the panels off. This one has a glass side and a mesh side, and yes, they are interchangeable. Once you've taken all the panels off, you're left with the bare bones of the case, as well as the front panel cables, obviously. The case has some impressive flexibility. You can use a full ATX or SFX power supply, and you can house up to 3-slot graphics cards. The motherboard tray can be moved forward slightly to allow for more graphics card space, however this will limit you to SFX power supplies. You can fit ITX size graphics cards up top if needed, leaving that space underneath for hard drives which have their own little cage that comes in the box, or obviously go the whole hog with your full size graphics card plugged into the riser. There is an included riser cable which works for that vertical mount. If you wanted that ITX size power supply in the top, you need to buy a slightly longer cable which comes as a separate add-on. This one that I'm using has the PCIe version 3 cable because I got it on a good deal, but really you guys, you should all be getting the PCIe version 4. I won't get into the exact reasons why, but trust me, it's going to save you a massive headache. Now with that said, what can you actually fit inside the case? So obviously it's only going to fit an ITX board. You're not going to be getting any of your ATX or other kinds of motherboards inside. It's also possible to get a 240 or 280mm radiator inside, and you just mount that on the front, but it is a real squeeze. Air coolers, yes, they can definitely fit, but it's going to depend on if you've moved that motherboard tray forward, and whether you're using mesh on the side panel or glass, because obviously you don't want your cooler pushing up against the glass and not getting any airflow. ATX power supplies can fit, but I would say you should only do this if you get the full mesh version, because if there's glass there, that power supply fan is getting choked out, and the last thing you want in your system is an overheating power supply. Video cards up to 3 slots will also fit in a separate chamber, which means that overall you can fit a huge range of configurations into the Meshlicious. One of the quirks of this case is that the monitor connections will be on the bottom of the PC once it's built, so you're going to need a 90-degree adapter. You do get a 90-degree HDMI cable in the box though, which will help you get up and running. Now for storage, most people, you're going to want to stick to your little M2 SSDs, though you can just tape, a regular SATA SSD wherever you want on the case, wherever there's some room. You can put HDDs in there, of course, like we said earlier, but that's going to necessitate you having a smaller graphics card in the top. So this isn't a case that you're going to want, if you're going to be one of these people that has loads of hard drives and things, it's not really going to be the case for you, I don't think. But even if you are one of these people that has loads of hard drives, guys, just get a NAS. Get a NAS, plug it into your wireless router, and you can have your data anywhere in the house. It's so much better. But that's an aside. That's all the stuff we're talking about with the Meshlicious. Let's build it up, and I'll see you on the other side of this build montage. I feel it on my skin today. All the things I try to wash away, they've been waiting for my walls to thin. I feel it on my skin, and now the ghosts are flooding in, trying to drown me in my former sins. Let the panic in my lungs begin. I feel it on my skin, a shiver and a shake.
the surface. I can shut my eyes and focus so I can see. Underwater, hear the rumbling of my former ego mumbling. Can you hear that too? Or maybe it's just me. A shiver and a shake may take me, but I'll still return. The memories that haunt me, shape me, a product of a
Hey. Not bad at all, if I do say so myself. Good performance. Bang on what I'd expect for this caliber of system. I'm not going to bore you with the gaming performance any further and just tell you what you've already seen on the screen. It's basically the same as any other Ryzen 5600 and RTX 3070 combo. We've done plenty of them on the channel if you wanted to have a look. But the temperature's really what we're looking into here, and I thought they were really impressive. One of the problems with ITX in general, is this small form factor stuff, is they tend to get hotter because you don't have as many air inlets. Everything's a bit smaller, you're crushing things into a smaller space, but we don't really see that here. We're maxing out the CPU temperature at 63 degrees and the video card at 72. Now, yeah, let's say if you put your Ryzen 9s in here, you're probably not going to get that exact same performance. But guys, if you're going for this super top-end hardware, I think ITX is going to be a real challenge, unless you're in it for the challenge and you want to do a custom loop or something like that. But for most mainstream, mid to high-end stuff, it's going to be fine. But for that super top-end, probably wouldn't be using this kind of ITX system. I think the look of the case is really sleek, very compact, and it does what it says on the tin. Ideal for those needing that smaller size or portability. What I would say is I think this case actually looks better without RGB. I think to really get the full professional sleek look, you're better off just completely blacking it out, having all mesh panels. I think it's going to look really nice on the side of your setup. If you're one of these guys that those RGB, gamer vibe, that kind of thing, there are some other options out there that are going to be a bit nicer. I think this one's more of a gentlemanly case, I would say. But perhaps the more important thing to talk about is the build process, and I have 3 pearls of wisdom to share. Lovely pearls. But the build process was simple but not easy. Obviously these words don't mean the same thing. It's simple but not easy. The hardest part was the liquid cooler. I wanted the fans to face the outside of the case for aesthetics. It basically just looks better in photos because I sell these systems. But this was actually a real squeeze with the pipes on the radiator because you're having to crush it into quite a small gap. So it took me a little while to get that in there safely. And that brings me to pearl number 1. If you use a liquid cooler, have it so that the radiator is on the front of the case. This will make installation a lot easier. Have the fans set so the airflow direction goes into the case. Otherwise, you're just going to push your hot GPU air onto your radiator and it's going to be a bad situation. Pearl 2. The best version to buy is the full mesh PCIe 4 version. This gives you the greatest flexibility and helps avoid black screens on your graphics card that you sometimes get when you use a PCIe 3 riser. It also allows you to use ATX power supplies without worrying about the fan being choked out. The full mesh also makes using air cooling for your CPU more viable. Pearl 3. Buy a 90-degree DP or HDMI adapter/cable because the video output will end up on the bottom of the case in most configurations. So, overall, I feel there's little out there that competes with this case in terms of space efficiency, style, and performance. So it's a big recommend from me if an ITX system is your goal. The ability to use an ATX power supply saves a lot of money, given that small form factor power supplies are usually so expensive. If the size doesn't matter to you, you'll find much better value and flexibility in a standard mid-tower. Value-wise, I'd say the case is just about right. It's typically £100 to £120 here in the UK, and I think any more is a little bit cheeky. You're paying for the design here rather than especially exotic materials. I mean, there's not a lot of metal on show here. The nearest competitor I can see is the Cooler Master NR200, which whilst that is actually a very good case as well, it's not quite as flexible and a little less attractive in my opinion. So I've shown you the case. I've exposed my pearls, and now it's over to you. Tell me in the comments what you thought, and tell me what I should review next. I'm always on the lookout for ideas. Subscribe so we can chat again sometime, and never, ever, ever forget that this is a Fallout 3 bobblehead, Charisma Edition. Bye-bye.